thanks for showing us this. BT dubs. So the goal of today is to talk about what the heck the shoulder programming is. Why is this important? What's the purpose of it? We'll dive a little bit very loosely into the shoulder, just to kind of give you like a high-level overview. What does the shoulder look like? What exactly is going on in here? Why might we be having some sort of issue? Just to kind of give you a little bit better of an understanding. And then at the end, we'll go over some of the movements that you'll do in the exercises or in the programming. We'll go over some of the mobility stuff that you guys will be doing as well. So we'll dive into all of this. The first thing that I want to do, however, with your whiteboard and your markers, let's take a couple minutes. I want you to write down, it's not a trick question, I want you to write down 3 to 5 exercises that don't use your shoulders that you do here in the gym. So 3 to 5 exercises that you do in this gym, in CrossFit, that don't use the shoulders. Is that good thing? She's back. Hey, snag a whiteboard and a marker. Write down 3 to 5 exercises that do not use your shoulders in CrossFit.
Oh, in CrossFit exercises.
CrossFit you're doing in this gym.
I mean, yeah, I know.
I was like,
I put some thought into this, and
I can think of some if you're not doing them correctly. Well,
it's a tricky question. 3 to 5 exercises that do not use your shoulders. And if you can't come up with 3 to 5, that's fine. But at least get your brain thinking about the question. It's a stopper. I think about everything that you do. A lot of what we do is with a barbell, right? So that you're using your hands attached to your shoulders. Tricky question, because you've only been here for a couple weeks, so you're still getting used to all of the movements. And like, what the heck is this thing called again? What's a thruster? Sounds gross. You can do it once or twice, you'll remember. Another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll okay, so we're going to come back to this here in just a second. So what's kind of the problem? I want to talk about the problem and then try to bring a solution to this. So the problem in our world, in our life, is that everything pulls us forward. If we think about regular life, right, most of us, who works behind a computer? Most of us work behind. Who spends a lot of time driving? Who uses their phone? Texting. So just some of these simple life things keeps us in this, like I'm reaching forward. Even if it's something here, my shoulders are coming forward. If I'm sitting down in my chair behind my computer, after a while, we start to gravitate towards this. Maybe you're not behind a computer, but your profession still has you leaning forward, right? Like you're not behind a computer all day, but you're still in a forward, like if you're hunched over, right? So even like I was talking to somebody, even just like hairstyles, right? Like everything is just in this forward motion, right? Yeah. So as gravity pulls us forward, our shoulders come forward, and then our head and our neck come forward. And it might only be like an inch or half an inch or a couple centimeters. Think about like our head as a bowling ball. If you were to hold the bowling ball out here compared to here, you'd only do it last, I don't know, a few seconds, 30 seconds, maybe a minute out here. If you hold it in here, you probably hold that bowling ball longer. Or like a child, right? Who walks around with a newborn child?
me?
Hold on like this. Right? We hold that human close to us. So same thing with the head, right? If we're doing this, all that weight is being in front of us, so something has to hold on to it. Something has to keep this thing somewhat in line. So if I'm here all day, the muscles on the backside are all getting taxed. Right? So that's life. Now what about CrossFit? Right? How many movements pull us in a forward position? Maybe this is almost like part 2 to the whiteboard question. You know, what movements don't use shoulders? But the second part is, what movements pull us forward? Right? So pretty much anything with a barbell, right? So deadlifts, cleans, snatches, all that pulls us forward. The thrusters we just did, that weight is in front of us, pulling us forward. All those push-ups we did, if we ever do bench press, everything is, not everything, most kettlebell swings is in the forward motion. So you see the kind of the pattern here, right? Like gravity, life, the weight is pulling us forward. And I feel like Marcus does a good job programming like a lot of bent over rows, a lot of stuff to try to target the back. But if we think about the amount of time we're spent in these positions, are we making up for the amount of time that's in the front? So everything pulls us forward. Eventually, that leads to one of two things. Either muscle imbalances or an injury. And the injury can be anywhere from the shoulder all the way up to the neck, right? Because you've got muscles that connect from the neck down to the shoulder. So everything that's working overtime, because we're in this position, through life or through hundreds or thousands of reps of CrossFit, eventually something's going to give. I can't do this anymore. And it's not always a noticeable buildup. Like sometimes it's like, man, I feel great. All of a sudden something tweaked. Maybe I slept or I woke up and my neck feels. There's usually a buildup, but we don't necessarily notice it. Right? If you were to poke around in certain areas, you might go, oh, this is a little tender. That tenderness is kind of a sign of some buildup going on. The other thing that can be an issue is maybe we've never talked to certain muscles. And that was me, right? So I come into CrossFit, I'm very mobile, I'm doing all these exercises, but there's certain muscles on my backside that, for whatever reason, I just never talk to. So when I'm doing a thruster, or a jerk, or a pull-up, or something, that muscle isn't turned on. So it's not turned on, so not only is it just going along for the ride, but something else has to make up for it. So we're already in a forward living life. CrossFit is pulling us forward with all the movements, and maybe some of our muscles aren't turned on. Just a recipe for an injury that's going to happen. Mobility issues, and then a potential injury. So how do we fix this? Being intentional with our workouts, being intentional by training the backside. So just kind of a personal example, I was getting into gymnastics, and I was starting to do a lot of stuff on the bar. No pop, no snap, no nothing, but there'd be times where I'd come down and be like, man, something like back between my shoulder blade is killing me. Like I've got this knot that just formed. It didn't feel like it was there 30 seconds ago, and now, man, like it kind of hurts. That's that buildup from the muscular imbalance. So if we can target these muscles, train these muscles, turn them on so they no longer are sitting in the passenger seat, but they're in the driver's seat to help move the shoulder blade in different directions, that's going to fix the muscular imbalance, prevent us from getting injured, help prevent us from getting injured down the road. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, so that's the purpose of the programming, is to target these muscles so that when you jump into pull-ups, all of a sudden they feel better. I don't get down from the bar at the end of workout and be like, I won't come to bar. Let's give it a day, right? We want to try to avoid that. So this is where iron shoulder comes in. Questions on any of this? Okay. So let's go back to the whiteboard real quick. I want to kind of look at some of these. What movements don't use the shoulder? Actually, what do you got? What's one?
I said box jump if you don't use your arms, which is doing it wrong. Lunge with no weight, and then air squat, possibly without using your arms.
Yeah. So we can make the argument for and against all those box jumps. I mean, who box jumps like this?
People that don't know how to.
Feel like you're a fish, right?
Oh,
Step up would be good. Right? But I can make it where there's still some sort of motion, right? Maybe there's no way, maybe it's not like a goblet step up where you're holding something. But usually, this is going to go, so we can make the argument for that, right? Box jumps, maybe less just because you are moving the arms even though it's not holding something. Lunges, another good one, as long as maybe it's not overhead lunge. But I don't think most of us lunge here. I think we're usually doing something with our arms. So a little bit of movement, but I like those. Joe?
Double unders.
You don't use your shoulders in double unders? Has anyone done double unders and not been like, I am tired? So you're holding, right? I like this though. There's not a whole lot of movement. Most of the movement happens here at the wrist, but holding this position does get fatigued, right? So if you think about the shoulder sitting back in the position it should be, if certain muscles aren't turned on, eventually that shoulder can be more forward. Or as we get tired, the arms go out and out and out, or forward and forward and forward. So I'm going to say 50% correct on that one. But I like where your head's at. Did we miss any others?
I had box jumps and air squats.
Box jumps, air squats. What do you have?
I had lunge and air squats.
Lunge, air squats. Pistols. Ooh, that's not a bad one. That's not a bad one. Doing a pistol. I mean, I guess if your arms are just kind of hanging out, you could do that. Some people reach. As a counterbalance, like reach.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're not holding anything, but there is some sort of movement. So I go with that one. Was it the other? Anyone else?
No, I had squats and lunges.
Okay. Anything that comes to mind?
I thought maybe strict sit-ups.
Strict sit-ups. So would your cross the arm? What would you do? Like this, a butterfly. I guess how would you do a strict sit-up? Variations of strict sit-up.
Yeah, I think I just try to keep my body.
Yeah. Yeah. So we could say minimal movement. We're not supporting. We're not holding anything. I think most of if we're doing sit-ups in a while, we throw the arms forward. I know you did. So maybe I'm here. Straight sit up. So we can go that one. Yep. Homer, anything?
Squats and box jumps.
Squats and box jumps. Jessica?
Squats and lunges.
Squats and lunges. Yeah.
Because at first I was like, oh, we got pelvic thrusters, we've got calf raises, we've got, and then you said CrossFit movement, and I was like, oh.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And calf raises. We've done calf
Calf raises in the warm-up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you kind of pick up on the gist though, right? Like basically everything. CrossFit is moving our bodies around objects or moving objects around our body. And most of us hold those objects with our hands. And that travels up, that base of support is the shoulder. Okay, so let's talk about briefly the anatomy of the shoulder, and I want to show you what muscles that we're targeting specifically to prevent injury. Okay, so don't get too caught up in the words and all the names and everything. I just kind of want to give you guys that visual. The left side here is like the outermost layer, the superficial layer. If you were to peel away the skin, these are what you're going to see first. And then if you were to kind of peel the onion away, you start to get into some of these. Now this is not every single muscle on the back side, but this is the majority of them. But you've got everything that's stacked on top of each other. We tend to maybe isolate things, like if I do this, I'm only working this. Everything realistically has to work in this like beautiful, harmonious symphony, right? I can target certain muscles, which we do in the programming, but just know, because everything is connected, everything works either with or against the movement. And when we start to give restrictions in the body, some muscles that should be working with tend to work against. So just kind of a high-level overview here on the back side of the shoulder. And I guess one thing I should know, so I think a lot of times we think of shoulder as like this, right? This is my shoulder, this is like my deltoid area. Really, when I'm talking shoulder, I'm talking about the shoulder blade, because the arm bone connects to the shoulder blade. And together, that creates your shoulder. So, muscles on the back side, muscles on the front side, just a few of them as well. The chest, the pec muscle, connects to the shoulder. There's a big pec muscle, Tiffany, we talked about this morning. There's a big pec muscle that everyone knows. There's also a smaller pec muscle underneath that connects directly to the shoulder. So that forward pulling life, if that little guy gets, if that guy gets tight, that pulls forward can cause pain issues. The bicep, arm, those muscles connect up to the shoulder as well. So what muscles are we targeting specifically with iron shoulder? So the mid traps, which is right here, and then the low traps, which is right here. So that's kind of right in this area here on the non-colored side. The mid traps, squeeze the shoulder blades together. The lower traps, pull them down.
Are ours gonna look like that at the end?
I hope so. I hope so. This guy has put in a bit of work. Honestly, when I see this, I think of Loops, right? If you've ever seen Loops' back, she's got a very well developed back. Even Jen, like I've seen Jen has a very well developed back. Those are the two people that kind of stick out to me. Maybe it's like when I look at someone without a shirt, I'm not just look at that. Like I'm looking at all the muscles, like ooh, there's your mid trap, your low trap. I can see your rotator cuff, those paraspinals. Like I'm trying to see what's going on underneath the skin. So this purple muscle and this green muscle, those are two of the muscles that we're combating because when we do this all day, this is extreme, right? But when we get into this position a lot, these upper traps, your trap is this huge muscle, right? This entire triangle right here consists of your trap, but we just know the trap is up here. It really extends down to the shoulder blade. So if we can target the middle and the lower piece to hold our shoulders back, keep us upright, that is going to be better for shoulder blade movement. Krista, what you're feeling?
Yep.
Right up in here. All right, so again, kind of a more in-depth look here. Don't get too caught up with everything. But you've got muscles that connect from the shoulder blade up to the neck. So that goes to that bowling ball analogy again. This position, long periods of time, can cause issues down here. What I want to highlight is this kind of darker circle here, if you can see it. This is where the rotator cuff is. So the rotator cuff is actually 4 muscles. It's 3 that are on top of the shoulder blade and 1 that's tucked up underneath. A lot of people have rotator cuff injuries. Like people get like a rotator cuff tear, but like I don't really have a reason why. I didn't fall over and hit something. I didn't do anything crazy. I had this pain all of a sudden. Yeah, I got like a small tear in my rotator cuff. That's that positioning, right? When we're here, these guys get stretched out. These guys, this is where I was always getting my pain. These guys get stretched out. So if we can strengthen this and this to hold back, we can prevent that issue. So we've got mid traps and low traps is what we're targeting, and we've got the rotator cuff is what we're targeting. The last thing that we're targeting is the serratus anterior. So I don't know if you guys can see this. It's kind of tricky with the glare, but on this left side, the shoulder blade is flush up against. On this right side, the shoulder blade is popping up. So that serratus anterior muscle underneath the shoulder blade controls movement. So when we're on that pull-up bar and my shoulder blade is going in different directions or I'm doing a thruster, it's not just up, down, left, right. The shoulder blade, it's the most mobile joint in your body, right? I can go big, huge arm circles. Can't quite do that with my hip, right? Can't do that with my fingers. Most mobile joint, which also makes it the least stable joint. This guy, almost no one ever talks about, right? I would say if we were to poll 100 people, 93% of them have underdeveloped serratus anteriors. We just never target it. It's just something that we never do in fitness, in sports. Unless you're a boxer or a pitcher and you're constantly going through these forward motions, you're probably not targeting. And this thing, man, if everyone could get on the same page, we'd have so many less problems. This is a gymnast. This is what you'll see with the serratus anterior. Most of the time, you're not going to see much. But if you ever see someone who's very lean, who's very muscular, you think these are the ribs. These are actually that muscle on top. That's not the ribs. That is actually the muscle. And it kind of pops out from underneath the lat. You guys kind of see that from where you're at? So I'm not expecting us to have these amazing, incredible serratus. I mean, we can get there, right? If you spend the time to do this, we can do that. But the point is, if we can turn these muscles on, if we can get them to jump into the driver's seat and not the passenger seat, your shoulders are going to feel so much better. It's gonna make movements, so I can't tell you how much better my pull-ups feel. If you ever get upside down, how much better that feels once you warm this side up. And that's a big target in iron shoulder, is that serratus anterior. That's where pushing away from the ground this morning, Tiffany, that's where that comes into play. That's the goal. So those are the muscles, mid-trap, low trap, rotator cuff, serratus anterior. Yes, we're gonna get the deltoid. Yes, we're gonna get the upper trap. Yes, we're gonna get the paraspinals. But everything that I've gotten here, I'd say 75% of these are rehab-based exercises that target these muscles specifically. The byproduct is your deltoid's gonna get bigger, right? Your lats might get a little bit bigger. But that's the target of these. So these movements are intentional. It may not seem like you're doing a whole lot. A lot of these are low weight to no weight. But you get done with 20 minutes and you're like, okay, all right, I'm a little tired. So, questions on the anatomy, questions on what we're doing, where we're going with this thing? Makes sense the shoulder blade moves around in all these directions and we want to try to control as much of that as possible? Okay. All right, so how does the program work?